I need you to get behind me, decenter yourself out of here, and help me do what I came here to do.
I think Frédéric laid the ground quite well, talking about the entrepreneurial spirit, talking about the creation of ecosystems that can help foster that spirit. And so all three of you run organizations that really do that. So I want to give you all an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. What is the role of ecosystems in advancing sustainability, and then of course draw in your own initiatives. So I'll start with you.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
We think that there's a huge new untapped wave of innovation that's happening around the world, and it's fueled by people that are here at the ChangeNOW conference. It's fueled by people that are putting purpose at the heart of how they think about their talent, their time, and their careers. And we find it enormously exciting. So at the Earthshot Prize, every year, official nominators are nominating incredible solutions that are working prototype level, have proven that if they were scaled, could help to repair and regenerate the planet. We look at startups, not-for-profits, cities, governments, youth movements, academia. We're actually business model agnostic. What we care about is those working solutions. But the work of the innovators is hard. I mean, listening to the blah, blah conversation just now, you can tell that being an innovator, it's hard in normal days, even if you're doing a standard commercial project. But if you're trying to take to scale something that's about the environment and something that's about communities and is new and disruptive, as an innovator, you need all the support we can give you. And we think you deserve an unfair advantage. And that's where the Earthshot Prize and organizations like ChangeNOW are platforms for enabling innovators around the world to get that unfair advantage, have access to capital, talent, support, because what the world needs is us to speed solutions to scale.
Great. Santiago.
Yeah, well, I think we all have this image that of the standalone, a success of the entrepreneur. But actually, successful entrepreneurs are most of the time just sometimes the outlier of the ecosystem, or at least the offspring of it. Yeah. So no one manages to create something huge and great and big alone. It really needs to have all the kinds of support, and this is all along the way also, because this is not necessarily the same thing you need when you're starting than when you are growing and later. Well, I will just keep it short right now on this question, but for me, this is the first thing to really have in mind, is that without ecosystems, you don't have stories of success.
Yeah, absolutely. Brighton, thoughts on this question of ecosystems?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, and very excited to join everybody. Within the STSN, our primary focus is to think about individuals who are mostly left behind. Ask them in the ecosystem, what sort of individuals or communities are left behind, and how do you start giving them opportunities and skills to become competitive? And for us, we look at the 1.8 billion young people.
I think we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I think, I don't know if there can maybe want to look at the tech here, and we might come back to you. So I'm sorry about that, but it's a little challenging to hear. But I'll come back, and I want to just talk a little more about these ecosystems questions, the connections. We were talking a little bit of Frédéric about large corporates, small entrepreneurs. And I'll start with you, Santiago. Here at ChangeNOW, you have a mix, building those kinds of connections. What needs to happen to better connect the big incumbent players with the forward-thinking entrepreneurs to really scale change?
Yeah. Well, when we started ChangeNOW, we had we thought a lot about this ecosystem theory. And everything started, you can see it in the logo there, the three circles. This is a first representation of an ecosystem. Entrepreneurial ecosystems usually starts with the rebels. You have those with the idea, the will to change the world, etc. Then you also have the finance, the fundings to help that. And then the third circle is the skills. who will be able to help you do that? And the strength of an ecosystem was modelized, not by us, but this is a real theory that exists. This is the area of the crossing of the three circles. Okay? So we started with that, and then we just figured out that the image wasn't complete. We need a lot more different players to complete this ecosystem. And you mentioned the big corporates. That's true. Actually, there are so many partnership opportunities between the solutions that are here and the big corporations. We had many of them happening during the last editions of ChangeNOW. You need to have also laws that are changing, and that is done either by policymakers that have this vision and also by activists that are pushing the opinions to go that way. So this is something super large now. The ecosystem has to be larger and larger because we need all the skills now on this special issue.
Absolutely. Hannah, I want to ask you the same question. You were in the corporate world before the Earthshot Prize doing sustainability work. I mean, how do you think these two can connect?
Well, I think we have to be very realistic about how a corporation operates and what it needs to be successful. Sometimes the startups are too small, and a corporation can actually kind of drown them out. But other times, the corporation is just moving too slowly, and we need to figure out how to speed them up and connect them with the startup. So there's a myriad of problems, including just the force of inertia that you see around the world. Where we sit with the Earthshot Prize is we want to wrap support around our finalists. Every year we have a cohort of finalists, and we've been building a fellowship program which wraps around them both content and curriculum and community, but also advisors. And then what we do is we curate and matchmake, bringing them together with our Global Alliance of partners who come from corporations, philanthropy, VCs, and we try to have a very curated conversation so that we can actually see the results that come from that and show models of scale. I think the final point to make, which is so important, is we need the world's imagination to be sparked by the incredible ingenuity of the innovators that we're all seeing. And so there, what we're really intentional about is how do we put the spotlight on these new innovations and hold them up to the world and say, this is the incredible opportunity we have. If we make these solutions the new normal, think of the world we could be in. So how do we collectively diminish the fear of change? We talk a lot about change, and entrepreneurs love change, and everybody else hates it. So we have to cross that bridge with storytelling and models of success and showing things going to scale together.
Absolutely, sparking that entrepreneurial spirit of change. I love that. Should we try to go to Brighton again? I don't know if we had a chance to look at the tech. Brighton. Oh. Okay, maybe we can just ask the question about creating ecosystems and how that applies to the work you're doing, what you think needs to be done.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that I'm much clearer now.
Much better, much better.
Excellent. No, I'm very excited. And I think for us, it's looking at, when we look at the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, who are the communities that are mostly left behind? In most cases, it's the young people, majority of them coming from the global south. So it creates opportunities for them to access a series of entrepreneurial tools for them to develop their local solutions, specifically addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. As you might know, we are almost halfway into the implementation of the goals. And what happens between this particular decade of action is going to pretty much determine the future generation and some of the accomplishments they're going to witness in their lifetimes. So one important aspect in the ecosystem is how do we identify these areas of acupuncture in terms of not only supporting established entrepreneurs, but also looking at those early stage entrepreneurs that don't have a strong foothold in the ecosystem and giving them the tools, the networks, the resources they need for them to, most importantly, become investment ready. And we've been doing this by looking at young people that have ideas on like mobility, ideas on urban sustainability, ideas on creating enterprises that help reduce emissions or provide access to healthcare or the determinants of health, the social determinants of health. But all this has been anchored on partnerships, which is also very well articulated in SDG number 17 on creating partnerships for the Sustainable Development Goals. So I would say creating partnerships which identify solutions that are locally ingrained and are delivering local solutions to local challenges that communities face around the world.
Great, yeah, that's great. Well, picking up on that theme of the global nature of your work, I want to turn to Hannah. You recently announced that there will be the first Earthshot Prize Awards in Singapore. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk a bit about why it's important to do that, to do the awards there, and then also to talk a bit about the importance of building global ecosystems, not just being here in Paris and in the Silicon Valley places and et cetera, you know.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Well, the Earthshot Prize is a global prize, and our intention is that each year we go to a different city and a different region as a way of spreading the Earthshot movement and really bringing the spotlight to stories of innovation and solutions and leapfrogging that's happening in those regions and in those cities. We love to put the spotlight on innovation and best practices and see how they can be shared around the world and replicated. So Singapore was a natural choice for us as a gateway into a conversation across Asia. We all know that Asia has been hard hit already by climate change and is already looking at the implications of what it means to be a resilient society and change rapidly in the face of climate change. One of the things that we're so excited about is how much innovation we're seeing happening in environmental solutions that are not-for-profit, for-profit, city, state, government, youth movement, academia, you name it. It's incredible. So we want to bring those stories and share them with the world. So Singapore, Asia, really interesting innovations. And the thing is that we need to feel like a global community, because there are solutions that are being birthed in Asia that could have application in Paris. And there are solutions in Paris that could have applications in Singapore. And so a lot of what we do is look for how we can find solutions that can be gifted and could be replicable in other areas. There is a huge amount of innovation out there, but the conversation isn't joined up enough. And we're not taking those solutions and thinking how we can plug and play them fast enough. We have to break down those barriers of information and barriers of collaboration and really move to a next level. We have this decade. This is the Earthshot decade. This is the decade in which by 2030, we have to reduce emissions by 40% and protect 30% of oceans and 30% of nature. And we will only get there by fueling these ecosystems through radical collaboration and removing the competitive and the silent barriers.
Absolutely. Santiago, I want to turn to you. So we're talking a bit about connecting global ecosystems, but at the same time, we know that a lot of collaboration does happen in the backyard with people who you're nearby. And you recently touted Paris as a potential, I think is a quote, Florence of the Green Renaissance. So curious, how do you see Paris becoming, this Florence of the Green Renaissance? And then what can places around the world learn from the work that's happening in Paris right now that they might be able to apply?
Yeah, well, just the first thing regarding that is that if you look at history, the main moments where there has been a civilization shift or something really meaningful in the transition of the society, the Renaissance was one, for example. You had a place where we had an immense intensity of talent, of funding, of everything they needed, of political support also. And because maybe you don't know, but in the same house you had Da Vinci Michelangelo, but also Machiavelli, for example. You know, even the thinkers of philosophy were next to the painters and next to the sculptors and the inventors. They were all in the same place, actually, and supported by a group of financiers of funders at this moment. So this is true for the Renaissance. What happened in the Silicon Valley is totally the same thing. The presence of Stanford, of all those big successes also of startups comes from an ecosystem that is stronger than everywhere else on the planet. And so the bet we do here actually is to think that we need to crystallize that also for the impact transition. And we need to find a place. And we identify that Paris has already a lot of great entrepreneurs, or a lot of great NGOs, of great corporations acting on water, waste management, and many other things. So there is a field for that. And on top of this, there are the Paris Accords. And I feel totally convinced that no other place or no other city than Paris is in the best place to defend their Paris Accord.
I love that. Best place to defend the Paris Agreement. Brighton, I want to turn to you. So much of the conversation we've been talking about, how do you spread ideas, spread stories so that people can really tap into this entrepreneurial spirit of change. You hosted in previous, when you were a little bit younger, a radio and podcast program that reached, I believe it's 2 million people a week, which is really astounding. Help elevating stories and elevating the voices of young people. And of course, you're working to sort of tell those stories and bridge those communities now. I'd be curious to hear your thought about the best ways to really give young people the knowledge and ability to make change using stories.
Absolutely. I think it's very exciting to just hear about the Earthshot Prize, but also what ChangeNOW is doing in voices. I think my strongest belief is let young people tell their stories, full stop. I think if they tell their stories and you give them a global platform, you then amplify the sharing of best practices and knowledge and already existing solutions. I think Anna did refer to this about how we can be able to create the replicability of different solutions towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, meeting net zero goals, and all many different targets that we already are discussing. Growing up in an environment in Zambia where sometimes when it rains, kids like myself and others couldn't attend classes, also experiencing the brunt consequences of pollution from mineral extraction, invoked that desire to think about telling stories of ordinary individuals using the most accessible and inexpensive medium, which was radio at the time. And just seeing how there was a cascade effect of building a movement that brought women, young people, civil society leaders, leaders in business and government towards one common goal of taking climate action. So being able to tell these stories not only amplified the challenges that existed in communities, but it also provided a space to engage in co-creating solutions that spoke to the needs of the community, the needs of leaders, and the greatest aspiration of young people. So now coming back to, scaling these, processes of storytelling globally, what we're doing within SDS and youth is to think about creating spaces where young people can have a community where they can belong and feel included, irrespective of where they are from and irrespective of their stage of development. So we eliminate these barriers to entry, which is normally spaces which are selective. I think when you go to most spaces, it's young people that have had access to the best education, the best opportunities. But we are breaking all those barriers by including everybody, irrespective of where you're from, how you look, how you speak. And we give you a space to speak about your story, the challenges you are faced with, and what you're doing about it, the key actions that you are taking. So across our incubator programs, the focus is primarily on helping young people tell their authentic stories with clarity, and we give them the tools and resources they need for them to be able to do that.
That's great. I want to ask both of the panelists up here about youth as well. How well, I mean, there's so much enthusiasm with young people about this, so much concern. What is the role of older generations to help channel that enthusiasm into this spirit of change? How can institutions evolve to do that better? And I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
I can jump on this one. You know, I grew up hearing my parents and my parents' generation saying, the next generation will have to handle the issue, you know. And at some point, we started ChangeNOW also because I said, okay, they were talking about my generation, you know. I have to do something. People told me that already young people is already saying this issue will be handled by next generation. Okay. So I think that we have now, our generation at least, and through what we're doing, this is also something we try to do, is that we try to do enough so they keep faith in the future. So they feel empowered enough to go to say, okay, this is also my turn to continue, and do not reject the responsibility to the next generation. So this is for me how I see the relationship with the younger generations, how we can just inspire them, the fact that we are still acting and that they can do the same thing. And I hope we are doing a good job. Let's see in the future on that.
I have a bit of a different opinion, maybe. I think we just need to get out of the way. I think that the Gen Z millennials that we meet on a daily basis are doing it. They're already choosing. They're saying, get out of my way. I want my time, my talent, my career to be centered around purpose. And what I need from you is your power, is your wisdom, is your battle scars of being in business. I need you to get behind me, decenter yourself out of here, and help me do what I came here to do. I see this amazing, inspirational determination and grit and ingenuity in the younger community, and they're all coming here. This is fantastic. You're creating that platform for them. I think businesses know that if they're not offering purpose to this new generation, they will not get the best talent. I think this next generation is the generation that's going to teach us all, and we can't get there fast enough to seed power, capital, and support to them immediately and give them the platform to run with it.
Excellent. Well, Brighton, last word on this question. What do you want to see from older generations to really empower youth to help elevate the work that you're doing?
Thanks, Justin. The most important thing is action. Action now, both in business, government, and society. And also embracing intergenerational equity, because that's what we need. I think leaders in business, government, and civil society should realize that young people today are inevitably leading change. If we look at what has happened, even in history, it's the young people that led the process of transformation. So I think it's very unfair that they are not given the opportunity and the space to lead change and be supported. So leaders of the world need to act, not yesterday, but they need to act today and urgently. Because if they don't act now, young people will continue to act and lead them like they are already doing.
Well, we have just under a minute left, and I'm tempted to leave it there because that's such a great ending. But thank you to this excellent panelist. I think it was a very engaging, interesting conversation to hear about the work you're doing, which I think should be modeled elsewhere as well. So thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.